We are just happy to see all of you and be together. But today we have a special guest in anticipation of, I almost said Shabbat, but that's true too. And getting ready for Pesach, for Passover, which is next week, we thought we would invite to VTS.
Really harsh punishment.
What's that? We thought we would invite, Ariel and I invited to VTS one of the most important characters and people in the history of our people. His name happens to be Moses. And Moses is has a lot to teach us about leadership, about community, about kindness, but also knows a lot about the story of our people. So can we give a big welcome to Moses?
Okay. You're not Moses.
Our screen name shown as Mark Lazar.
Yes, well,
You're Mark Lazar, not Moses.
I know, but this is very strange times with a virus going, that there's this idea that spirits, souls are floating all around. And it just so happens I, Moses, have arrived in the spirit and body of Mark Lazar at this time. Usually you would expect Eliyahu to come knocking on your door, sip a little wine, and make sure you're doing the Seder. But this year, I came down. And I came down because I know how needed I am. You know, I had a rough childhood. You probably have heard about it. Maybe you've seen my movie, the cartoon version, or that one with Charlton Heston. But you know, I had a rough childhood. I mean, my mom abandoned me when I was quite small. I was placed in a basket. I was very lucky that my sister actually brought me to the princess of Egypt, who raised me. And I was raised in royalty. I saw what rulers are like. I watched that Pharaoh as an example of maybe how you should lead, or maybe how you shouldn't lead. And then when I saw what happened to the Israelites, when I saw that Egyptian taskmaster whipping the slave, the Israelite slave, I couldn't help myself. I had to say, this is not justice. And I got rid of that taskmaster. But then I was worried. What if my adopted father, the Pharaoh, would find out? What if I was executed? What if I was kicked out? And I left. I was banished. I left. I ran into the desert. And all alone, I found my beloved wife. I found an amazing father-in-law, Jethro, who taught me all kinds of things about leadership, about delegating to have people help you lead. And I was fine. I was quiet. Until one day when I was tending sheep, and I looked up on the mountain, and I saw a little sheep all by itself. It wandered off, and as I went to help that little sheep down, I looked inside a cave, and I saw a bush. That was a flame, a burning bush. It wasn't burning at all. It was constantly on fire, but there was no ash. And I heard the voice. Moses, Moses. Who is that? Moses, take off your shoes. You're on holy ground. It is your Lord. As I experienced God, like I'd never experienced God before, I was told, go back to Egypt, go to the Pharaoh, take my brother Aaron with me, because I wanted someone to help me speak, because I was a little slow of tongue, and tell the Pharaoh, let my people go. That's what I did. I went back to Egypt. I met with all the Israelite slaves. I went with my brother Aaron, my sister Miriam. We went to the Pharaoh. We went 10 times to let my people go. We argued on behalf of our people. And when Pharaoh said no, awful things, the plagues hit the Egyptians. And finally, after the last plague, which was quite intense, Pharaoh lost his firstborn son. He said, get out of here. And we then, that night, had the first Seder while we were still in Egypt. We offered a lamb. We put the lamb's blood on the door so the angel of death would pass over. We ate the lamb, roasted, barbecued. We had matzah, unleavened bread. We had maror, bitter herbs. And we had those three things on that night before we took off the next day to leave Egypt. And as you know, Pharaoh changed his mind. Familiar leadership, if you know what I mean. And as he started chasing us, and we're at the Red Sea with a outstretched arm, God opened the Red Sea, led us through, closing the water on the soldiers. And Miriam led us in a dance of celebration. Who is like God? And as we kept wandering, We wandered to Mount Sinai. We received the 10 Commandments. We wandered in the desert for 40 years, going towards the promised land. I was challenged a lot with my leadership. People thought they could lead better than me. Even my sister and brother at one point talked bad about me. We learned about life in the desert. We received the 10 Commandments and the other laws of how a community can work together. And we had our plagues too. We suffered a lot, but we made it. We got through to the promised land. I was challenged a lot with leadership. Sometimes I made mistakes, but I learned from those mistakes, and hopefully others have learned as well. And yes, that Rabbi Avi you have there, he was correct. You'll probably read about me this Shabbat too, because right now we're still in the desert wandering as we read the Torah portion every week. Well, I thought maybe we'd take some questions if you have any questions about me.
Well, thank you, Moses. That's very helpful and insightful as we prepare for Pesach. I have a question.
Sure.
And my question is, I'm curious, after all the things you went through and all of the trials and tribulations, from a baby being thrown into the water, being taken out, and everything you went through, I'm curious if you know, we celebrate today this Pesach differently than you did. You may know about it, maybe you don't. We get together and we celebrate with families and we have big meals.
Rabbi Akiva told me when I saw him a while back.
Oh, okay, good, thank you, good. And so you know the Passover Seder and Haggadah we tell, but if you know, your name's not in it at all. And I was curious how you feel about that because you're kind of an important person in our history. So I'm going to put myself on mute. So
Kind of?
Yeah, exactly, kind of. It's not the 5 books of Avi, is it? It's the 5 books of Moses. So, you know, I'd say first I kind of resented it. I mean, those rabbis, especially this Rabbi Akiva, who I did meet in a Midrashic story as well, I resented it. I mean, I am the man. But then I thought, well, you know what? I'm not really. I am exactly just a man. And it wasn't me that did any of these things. It was God. It was God's outstretched arm. It was the people that matter. And we're not thinking about Passover being Moses' birthday, my birthday, or what I did. We're thinking about we as a people, that we became a people. The Jewish people were finally free after being slaves. And we got the Torah, we got ways to live, we got democracy. We got all that afterwards. And it's not me. I was just used by God. So at first, but you know what? I've read a couple of these modern American versions that have "Go down, Moses, way down to Pharaoh land." In fact, there's a great Louis Armstrong version of that too that I sometimes play as I'm cleaning when I'm in the body of Mark Lazar. But I can live with that not being in there because I know people are aware of what I did, but it wasn't me, it was God. And the true memory is the people survived.
Wow, thank you, Moses. I have one last question before we let these beautiful young men and women go back to their lives. And my question is, so videoing with you right now are some incredible young men and women who are studying with these great teachers about the tradition that stems back to your days. Yes. My question is, what would the one piece of advice you have for these young men and women as they are exploring their own Jewish identity?
I'd say that, well, I'm reminded of Rabbi Hillel. I mean, we're talking about what the essence of Judaism is. You know, standing on one foot, he said, basically, don't do bad things to other people you wouldn't want done to yourself, or love your neighbor as yourself. For me, that's the essence of Judaism, but I think there's so much more. I think there's appreciating that we're still alive, appreciating what we have when we look out the window with the nature, that we have food. I think that it's amazing that since my time, over 3,250 years ago, we're still having the Jewish people. That we're going back talking about Abraham and Sarah over 3,700 years ago. Whether it happened exactly as we read it, that the Jewish people, a people with values of trying to treat each other equally and fairly, that all people are created in the image of God, no matter what religion, what gender, what political differences. I think that's the essence of love. And I guess I wish all of you at this really hard time. My mom's turned 92 today is her birthday. 92, she's lived through a lot. I'm so thankful that I'm with her for this coming Passover. My daughter visiting from Israel is here, that we have family, and I'm assuming most of you are with family, to really be appreciative of what we have, of the family, of the love we've been given, of calling people, chatting with them, distant relatives. And Passover, just being appreciative we're still alive, and that no one should ever be a slave of whatever form at all. And you all can be leaders in that sense.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Moses.